I see. Okay. All right. Now tell us about the baby farmers, because I haven't heard
Okay, the
that.
baby farmers were primarily in England during the 1800s, and all of them were women. And what they would do, they would advertise in the papers in London and the major cities, and basically what they'd say, if you have a child, an infant that you can't care for, or you're going to have this baby secretly, and you don't want anybody to know, I will take the child for a sum of, generally it was equivalent to like $25. Of course, that was considerable money back then. And I will raise the child as my own, or I will have the child adopted by a great family and so forth. So these women would go out and turn over the babies. Most of them were infants, under 6 months at that time. They would give her fee, and then they would leave. And in all cases, within hours after the mother left, they would kill the baby and throw the baby with some rocks tied to it into the Thames River. And the three women I have in those stories, they were all eventually executed, but they were guessing that they probably accounted for at least 1,000 murders of babies.
Wow.
And it's just,
That's sad.
yeah, it's sad. It's the last thing you think, well, wait a minute, most women would, they're very caring and nurturing, but they were just, they thought nothing of it. It was just like slaughtering a chicken, just, hey, you paid me, no, thank you very much, and I killed the kid, threw him in the river.
So they were just taking the money and just killing the kids.
Exactly. Yeah, one woman, when the constables finally arrested her for it, she had over 300 pounds of infant clothing in a room. Now, when they brought the infants there, it was just what they were wearing. So think how many babies it had to be to add up to 300 pounds of baby clothing.
Unreal. Do you know how they caught her? I mean, did someone see her doing it, or did these babies wash up in the river? I mean, what was going on there?
Well, yeah. Some of the babies did wash up, and they found them, and they kept tracking back. So, well, the river's running in such and such distance. They'd back up, and they'd start going house to house and try to figure it out. And then they finally what seems to be, because they weren't exactly sure in all the stories, but that somebody eventually told the police. For instance, a woman would give up her child, and they'd say, "Oh, you can come back and visit the child anytime you want." And every time they tried to visit, they said, "No, the kid isn't here. You can't come now." There's always an excuse. And finally, somebody went to the police over there at Scotland Yard, and they started investigations. And that's how most of these ended up. Somebody started to talk about it, and the police got involved, and then their evidence. Today, they probably couldn't prosecute a lot of it because the evidence, a lot of it was hearsay and speculation, and a lot of it was, but most of it ended up being a confession with an excuse, and so they hung all of them eventually. But it went on for at least 200 years, and you can only imagine. These weren't the only three in London. There were quite a few doing that. And there were some in the U.S. that were doing it at the same time, and in France and so forth. So you can imagine just all of the infants that were slaughtered in that fashion.
That is, that's sad and shocking.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that before. So.
Oh, I know. I spoke to a friend. We completed. He lives in England. He's been a reporter for 35 years over there, and certain many books. We wrote a book together, and I was telling him about. He said, "What are you talking about? What's a baby farmer?" And it's because it's something obviously it's not in their history books. They don't talk about a lot.
Yeah, I imagine not.
No. And then also in regarding England, I have two stories from the 1700s about witches, how they dealt with them, and
yeah, tell us about that. I saw
basically there were one, and what's funny, it's not funny, it's just how they viewed it. These were filler stories, just little paragraphs or two. That was very common, so everybody knew about it. But there were three women. and said one was a very beautiful young Jewish woman, and the town decided that they were witches. That's all it says, that they decided they're witches. So they decided to burn them to death. They're alive, and they burned them. And there was a priest there who said afterwards that he saw Satan fly out of the body of the one woman while she was burning to death. And so then they knew they were witches, because the priest said he saw that. And then there are two senior citizens, both in their 60s, and same thing, they lived in this town forever, and some people came forward and said, hey, I think the woman that lives there, she's a witch, for whatever reason. And so the town got upset, and they went out there and said, hey, you're a witch, and the people are saying this, and the woman said, you're crazy, get out of here. She barricades herself, her and her husband, in the house. They take them out, and it was trial by water. So they tie their hands together and their feet together, and they throw them in a pond. And if they sank and they drowned, that means they weren't a witch. But if they're able to survive, that means they were a witch. And well, both of them died. So they go, how about that? They weren't witches. They made a mistake. And then they went about their business. So it's just some really, seems now, insane stories. But you have to look at the 1700s, what they believed. We had the Salem witch trials before that in America. But in some areas of the world now, they still believe in witches. So it's not unusual to see that, but I put those stories in the books because it's so shocking and unbelievable, but it's a true crime.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's really shocking, and you really bring the point about in your book as far as like the pictures that you have in there, the photos of the lynchings.
Oh, yes.
The death, watching people die was just nothing to them back then. It wasn't shocking. It was something made to be a spectacle, and they wanted to see it. They wanted to see their faces, and people gathered for it. So that's a real shocking thing to me. Let's talk about some of the lynchings that you have in your book. So, which ones did you decide to write about?
Well, there are actually 5 lynchings that I wrote about, that I found the stories on, and there were thousands and thousands. Primarily, it was whites lynching African Americans for any perceived injustice, and there are many times they lynch people, and even afterwards say, well, we thought he did whatever, stole a horse or insulted somebody, but we found out afterwards that he didn't. So, hey, we made a mistake, no big deal, but they killed the guy. But there's one story in there, excuse me, about 3 brothers, and and what happened was the 4th brother was in court for a minor misdemeanor infraction, and for some reason he pulls a gun and he shoots and kills the judge, and he takes off. And so a posse forms, vigilantes in the town, and they go out to the house where this young man lived. And he wasn't there, but the 3 brothers were there, his other brothers were there. They said, where's your brother, so-and-so? Well, we don't know, which they didn't. So they had a little parlay, and they said, well, let's hang these 3 brothers for the other brother. And so they take him out to the woods, away from the house, and they hang the one brother and let the other brothers watch. And some of the guys said, well, man, we shouldn't hang them because they didn't do anything. But then the crowd overwhelmed them and said, no, we should hang them all. So they hung all 3 of the brothers, who were completely innocent, and they knew they were innocent. But because they didn't say where their brother was, which they didn't know, they decided, hey, well, we'll kill them. And so they hung them.
Is that the picture that you have in your book?
No, I have several. I mean, there were, found dozens and dozens of photos of lynchings. And massive crowds. It was like going to the Oscars. You know, the crowds around waiting for the stars to walk by.
Right, like the red
It
carpet or
was,
something. It's crazy.
oh yeah, it was, for a better term, a joyous event to them. It was the best show in town, and it was fun, and everybody had to go, and the kids were brought, and as they lynched the guys, and sometimes, a lot of times they lynched the women too, and then in many cases they burned the body afterwards. And sometimes it has stories where they would hang the person, and then everybody would walk up, pull out the gun, and shoot the body as part of the fun and the celebration. And you know, you just shake your head, and you just wonder, you say, what were people thinking back then? But then you realize this was how the majority of the people thought in those areas, and what they thought was normal and great and justice. It's just incredible. And then I have a short list of lynchings. That was in one paper. They just printed for a number of months all the lynchings where they occurred. It just said Joe Smith lynched in Hattiesburg, Mississippi for stealing a chicken or something like that.
And these
it
were
just
carried out. I want people to understand. These were not carried out by law enforcement. These were just
No.
like citizens getting together and just deciding to just hate people for whatever.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times these people were in jail for who knows what. A lot, you know, there are quite a few that they killed somebody, and the sheriff or the local police, they were holding them, and the community get together and they'd go down there and storm the jail and say, hey, well, you know, we're taking this person out now, and to hang them, or if you get in our way, we'll kill you. And there's maybe 2 or 3 cops there, and 200 or 300 people, and so they'd say, go ahead, take them, and they'd take him out, kill him, and that was the end of it. And what I was surprised to find that in some communities there were African American groups, community that get together and lynch an African American who they said like raped a girl or committed a crime, whatever, and they would lynch them. And there was one, I don't recall the state right now, but they put together basically like an anti-crime committee, and it was some wealthy African American people back then, and they said, you know, nobody's going to be committing crimes in our city, and some crimes were committed that they justified the death penalty, and they had these people lynched, and it was by a community. So it was very interesting when you look at it history-wise. You know, by far African Americans were lynched 100 to 1, but then there were some that were lynched by African Americans. So
You know what? That
it's
actually
interesting reading.
happened. I don't know if you saw this, but I can actually send you the article. It happened in Los Angeles a long time ago, actually on television. There was a live lynching. They had been talking about it, and I did a show on it for my other podcast, and it was advertised. The news out
Really?
there said, yeah, that this guy was going to be hung by the mob, you know, a mob of people, and it happened, and it was broadcast on television, so
Oh,
I can send
jeez.
that to you. But I know
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
what you're talking about. So it was like it was nothing back then. I mean, death was
Yeah.
not a scary thing to watch
No.
or witness, you know.
Yeah, it wasn't scary to watch, and it wasn't scary to be involved in it. It was just enough of us get together, and we're going to go do it, and then everybody just forgets it, moves on.
Right.
So yeah, it was, when you read those stories and you go, this was America then, which was commonplace pretty much everywhere in the country, you know, more in the South. But then in the West, I came up with many, many stories out in the West where there were just as many lynchings, but they were lynching primarily a lot of Mexican Americans then because of the territories, and other people that were horse thieves or cattle thieves, which most of those people were Caucasian and Hispanic. And same thing, they just go to the jail, pull them out, lynch them, or if they even made it to the jail, that was generally what happened. They would
Catch them on the
out.
way to jail.
Yeah, or they would catch them themselves, you know, and they'd say, hey, this guy's been stealing cattle from us. They'd catch him and hang him. just leave the body hanging wherever they kill them at. But those numbers, nobody actually knows how many were killed in that fashion, because in most cases, these people would never make it to the town. It would be, say, a rancher and his hands would catch somebody stealing cattle from them. They would string them up at that stage and just leave their bodies out in the mountains or in the desert. Matter, and it was just handled in that fashion.
Mm-hmm. Well, you do talk about, while you're talking about the West, you had in your book, I saw Wyatt Earp, which I love hearing about him anyway, and Billy the Kid. So tell me what you found on that.
Okay, well, in the first volume 1 book, I have quite a bit about the Earp brothers and the Dalton gang and Bigfoot the Renegade and so forth. But with the Earp brothers, until I really started digging into it, I had heard, which 99% of the people have heard, that, hey, they were lawmen, primarily in Tombstone and the OK Corral shootout and so forth. And then they just moved on from there. But when I dug into these articles that were written at the time, the Earp brothers were not that clean.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and what they would do in a lot of places, they would go into a town, and they were always on the move, because once they were there and the town realized what they're doing, the town would run them out, chase them out. And so what happened in Tombstone, which everybody knows, the OK Corral and all that stuff, the one brother was a marshal, and the other was kind of deputies, would hang out now and then. But what they had was a guy in the Wells Fargo office. The Wells Fargo ran the stagecoaches with the money on it and so forth. And they would tell the Earp brothers, they say, hey, this one guy told them, said, there's a stage coming in next to whatever day it was, and it's going to have $10,000, $30,000, $50,000 in gold or whatever in it. So the Earp brothers said, great. They would go out there, they would rob the stage, then they would circle back into town and wait for the stage to come in. The stage would come in, and the guy driving it would say, hey, we were robbed out there. These bandits, there's 3 or 4 or 5 of them, whatever. And also Doc Holliday was part of the gang. And so then the Earp brothers would go, well, damn, we've got to catch those desperados. They'd put together a posse made up of themselves and some other town people. They would ride out to try to track down the guys who robbed the stage. Well, it was them, and they would go out, they would never find them. Well, what happened was the guy from Wells Fargo finally was in a bad position, and he copped out. He told them what the Earp brothers were doing and how he was part of it. And so that's when the Earp brothers left Tombstone very rapidly, because the town was after them. And, those are stories you don't hear about. And the other one you don't hear about, which I didn't know until I really got into it, but the Earp brothers, before they got Tombstone, they had a younger sister, and describes her as being very intelligent and a pretty girl and everything. Well, the Earp brothers were outlaws. They were primarily robbing stages and so forth, where Ike Clanton in this gang, which that name probably pops up in somebody's memory because of the OK Corral shootout. Ike Clanton and them, they were cattle thieves. And so they both knew it. But what happened was the Earp's younger sister eloped with Ike Clanton, and they took off to leave town. And so when Wyatt and his brothers found out about Doc Holliday, said, well, this is horrible. We got to track him down, and basically they're looking at killing him and killing her. Well, they found him in a town not far away, and they saw them in basically this hotel, and they just started shooting at him, opened up fire on him. They shoot the sister. Ike doesn't get shot. Ike grabs her. She's wounded. He runs out the back, jumps on a horse, and takes off. They're chasing him. He ends up at a mine where there's a bunch of Irish miners, and he runs in carrying her. And
she
he tells
dies,
them,
though, right? She eventually dies.
she dies at the end, yes. And so what they do is the Earps get there, and the miners come out with their guns. About 30 miners, and they're saying, "We want them." They say, "No, you're not getting them." So they decide to have a duel, and the winner takes her, right? So the Warner brother, he gets up to the youngest one. He says, "I'll fight the duel with Ike Clanton." Well, they face off. He shoots at Ike Clanton, misses. Clanton shoots at him and kills him. So the miners go, "Well, hey, fair duel." He keeps the girl, and then she dies from her wounds. But it's a story like that people have never heard regarding the Earps, and it changes your perspective on it. And then I also have in there when Wyatt eventually ended up in San Francisco years later as a boxing referee, and there's no doubt he was paid off, was a heavyweight championship boxing fight, and he called it at the end after the manager of the one boxer jumped on stage who got knocked down and said, "Hey," he has a little chat with Wyatt, and Wyatt says, "Oh, so-and-so's disqualified now because it was a low blow." The crowd went crazy because it wasn't, and he was run out of town again. And so it gives you a different perspective on Wyatt Earp through the eyes of people in history who were actually there when it happened.
Yeah.
It's not through a novelist or through a movie or anything.
Well, I haven't seen a movie come close to anything that you were talking about, because my favorite movie, one of my favorite movies, it don't even mention, it didn't even mention their sister at all, and it definitely didn't mention like the fight with Ike and how all that, how you just described to me how that actually went down. It was just crazy how I just wish I could see one that was real true to history and really what happened, because I don't know of one. I really don't.
Yeah. No, and Wyatt, I have there his arrest warrant early on. He was a horse thief, and he and this other guy stole some horses, and there was a warrant issued for his arrest. And he took off. He ran into, at that time, it was called Indian Territory. So once he took off, they go, he's out of here, forget it. But I have a copy of the warrant that was issued for his arrest. So it's interesting when you see the true perspective and the true background of people that have been turned into heroes by the media, television and so forth, and movies. But yeah, the Earps make very interesting reading.
They really do, and I still love hearing about them. Still love the movies, even though they're not true. But
oh yeah, they're good movies.
Yeah, they are. Okay, so tell us, the last one I want to hear about is Billy the Kid. I don't really know a lot about him, but can you tell us what you found out?
Yeah, well, just his whole story, the background, when he was out, what got him going, and so forth, and the crimes that he committed, the shootings, the murders.
And what states did he frequent?
He was kind of moving around. He was in Tennessee for a while, Texas, all through the South. And there were times, there were other stories, they thought it was him, that he committed certain crimes, but they really didn't know. But they said, we think it was that Billy the Kid, but they couldn't prove it at the time. Because the guy he would come in, he would kill somebody, and then he was gone. And they assumed it was him. And it's the same, I have, like Butch Cassidy and his kids, stories about them. Jesse James, another guy who was in California at the time. Really, he was the only major California cowboy criminal they had at the time, and he was operating through the state until he was hung. But it's just very, very interesting. And one I don't want to forget. I end the second volume with this story about a defense attorney defending this woman in Washington, D.C. And what she did, she was a prostitute and a madam, and she was blackmailing one of her customers. So he finally said, I'm not paying you. So she hunted him down. He's on basically a trolley. She walks on it. She shoots at him. She misses him. She wounds the guy next to him. And she fires another round and kills the guy on the other side. Completely innocent people. So she goes to trial, and in D.C., and the defense attorney brings up, he says, well, she's insane. And the judge says, what do you mean she's insane? And the defense attorney says, well, I claim that she's insane if it would get her off scot-free, basically, just making it up. But what was truly interesting, I researched her background, and she was running a whorehouse in Washington, D.C., an abortion clinic, and she personally and her women were servicing many of the congressmen and senators in Washington, D.C., and performing abortions for their mistresses. But what is true, guys, during the Civil War, she was arrested by the U.S. forces 3 to 4 times, dressed as a man, smuggling weapons across the Potomac and drugs and everything to the Confederate forces. She was a Confederate spy. So each time they captured her, the Union general there would put her on tribunal and hang her, because that's what they did to the spies then, or shot them.
Mm-hmm.
But each time she was arrested, it would come down from the Secretary of War, hey, let her go, don't touch her. And so this kept happening. And the reason being is because she was servicing the Secretary of War and all the high-ranking politicians in Washington, D.C. She was servicing all of them, and they didn't want that coming out. And so it's interesting when you read this. It's a little short story, but then I did the background on it, and it's fascinating. You look, hey, Washington really hasn't changed,
No, it hasn't.
Yeah, it's the same as it was back during the Civil War.
Wow, unreal. It's great that you've written something like this for those that are really interested in, true crime and things that happen like way before our time. And I commend you for this. And you have part 2 of this one is also available on Amazon. And I think I'll have you come back and talk about that one as well, Mike. But before we go, please tell my listeners where they can find out more information about you or any other projects you're working on.
Well, the best place right now would be on Amazon, because I have a good number of books on there and that are available. And then if they just do a Google search on me, they'll see a lot of the news articles, hundreds of news articles pop up and so forth.
Very good, Mike. Many blessings to you, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition. I want to thank my special guest again, Mike Rothmiller, for joining me to discuss his book. This is the first one of 2 books, and I will have him back to discuss the other one in the near future. It's called True Crime Chronicles, Serial Killers, Outlaws, and Justice, Real Crime Stories from the 1800s. It is available right now on Kindle, audiobook, and also paperback. I want to thank my producer tonight, Ken, and the Mysterious Radio team. I'm your host, K-Town. I want you to have a good night, stay safe, and stay healthy, and I'll see you next time on Mysterious Radio.
Like the show? Get more Mysterious Radio on our website. And don't forget to visit our Twitter and Facebook page.
Community Bank. Earn $3 for every egg with a totally free checking account. Learn more at fcbutah.com/goodgradespay. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Good Grades Pay at First Community Bank. Students ages 14 to 25 who open a totally free checking account and submit a report card at the end of the term will receive $3 for every A. That's worth studying for. Learn more at fcbutah.com/goodgradespay. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Want to earn more than just a pat on the back for your report card? Good Grades Pay at First Community Bank. Earn $3 for every A with a totally free checking account. Learn more at fcbutah.com/goodgradespay. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Hi there, I'm K-Town, and on this edition of Mysterious Radio.
mention of Eisenhower and aliens being at Muroc appears in a letter from Gerald Light to Meade Lane, founder of the Borderland Sciences Research Association, now a foundation. BSRF, Borderland Sciences Research Foundation, has preserved the letter, and the date on the link is April 16, 1954. The letter opens with this: "My dear friend, I've just returned from Muroc. The report is true, devastatingly true. I made the journey in company with Franklin Allen of the Hearst Papers and Edwin Morse of Brookings Institute, Truman's erstwhile financial advisor, and Bishop McIntyre of Los Angeles. Confidential names for the present, please." The mention of aliens referred to as Etherians and their craft is as follows. "During my 2 days visit, I saw 5 separate and distinct types of aircraft being studied and handled by our Air Force officials with the assistance and permission of the Etherians. I have no words to express my reactions." And the reference to Eisenhower is this: President Eisenhower, as you may already know, was spirited over to Muroc one night during his visit to Palm Springs recently. Lane commented on the letter in 1958 with this: "The matter of an alleged visit by President Eisenhower to Muroc Base is clearly reported simply as a personal inference and belief. In fact, the Probert controls have said that the President sent a personal representative, but did not go to the base himself. There is much guesswork also where the writer of the letter quoted talks about future policies, public reaction, etc. He is not a prophet, and I quote him only for the interest of the Muroc affair, concerning which I still get many inquiries. The Probert controls were the entity's BSRA member Mark Probert, channeled as a transmedium. He is referred to as the Telegnostic from San Diego on the BSRF website." Michael Salla explored the matter in a research study published on the Exopolitics website on January 28, 2004. In his abstract, he tells the story of Eisenhower's disappearance and how reporters were told that Eisenhower had gone off to have emergency dental treatment. Salla then tells the reader that his paper will explore evidence of first contact with Nordic ETs, an agreement made with them, and a series of meetings leading up to a contract being signed with the Greys. Salla brings up one fact that has helped fuel the alien meeting theory, and that is that Eisenhower had just gone on a quail hunting vacation in Georgia a week before. He credits the letter from Light as the first public source alleging a meeting with extraterrestrials, but he doesn't include Lane's comment. He cites an essay by William Cooper as his source for the letter, and includes Cooper in his list of whistleblowers supporting the story. The others are John Lear, Robert Dean, and Phil Schneider. What these men have in common is that they used their backgrounds in the military and intelligence communities, both real and invented, to give credibility to outlandish tales of alien interactions with government entities. Cooper's essay is a vivid example. Also in 2004, Salla published Exopolitics, Political Implications of the Extraterrestrial Presence. And Peter Carlson of the Washington Post interviewed Salla about the Eisenhower and aliens story and looked into it himself. After presenting Salla's version, Carlson explores the dentist theory. Carlson talked with Eisenhower Library archivist Herb Pankratz, a specialist in transportation-related archival matters. Because UFOs are considered by some to be transportation, Pankratz became the person who dealt with the many questions about the alien meeting as the story entered the popular imagination in the 1980s and 90s. Pankratz believes the dentist theory and cites an article by dental historian James Mixon, A History of Dwight D. Eisenhower's Oral Health, published in the November 1995 issue of the Bulletin of the History of Dentistry. Using the U.S. Surgeon General's records of Eisenhower's oral history, Mixon determined that on the night in question, Eisenhower chipped the cap on his upper right central incisor. The cap was reportedly repaired by Dr. Francis A. Purcell. Purcell died in 1974, and no record of the repair remains, so belief that the dental emergency was a cover story remains. The story hit the news again in 2010, when retired New Hampshire State Representative Henry McElroy posted a YouTube video where he claims to have seen a document that supports the alien theory. He says this: "The document I saw was an official brief to President Eisenhower. To the best of my memory, Viagra sans ordonnance, this brief was pervaded with a sense of hope, and it informed President Eisenhower of the continued presence of extraterrestrial beings here in the United States of America. The brief seemed to indicate that a meeting between the President and some of these visitors could be arranged as appropriate if desired. And why would a state representative have access to what would likely be a classified document that originated in a federal office? McElroy claims that as a member of the State Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs Committee, it was important that he be updated on a large number of topics related to the affairs of our people and our nation. This tale, like many UFO tales, will likely be repeatedly resurrected and retold. And, like many UFO tales, this one has been added to. Around 2007, researcher Art Campbell claimed that a witness identified only by a pseudonym wrote him a 7-page letter saying that Eisenhower landed at Holloman Air Force Base and met with aliens there during his hunting vacation in Georgia. Holloman. Aliens. That sounds familiar.
To find out more about our guest and all others, please visit our website at mysteriousradio.com. And I want to give special thanks to our co-creator and executive producer, Kim Kyle, who brought this show to you today. And working hard behind the scenes, our team of 4, I want to thank them as well. Follow us on social media and share the show with others that may like the subjects that we cover. I am your host, K-Town, and you're listening to Mysterious Radio.
Air Ambulance Network and pay monthly for your annual membership? It's an easy and convenient way to add financial peace of mind that covers your entire household. Air Medcare Network members never pay out-of-pocket costs for transport, only when flown by their providers. And with 320 bases across 38 states, an Air Medcare Network provider can be there fast. Plan ahead for the unexpected for just $9.99 per month. Visit airmedcarenetwork.com.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a wooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? If you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. Choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
Stay warm and save every day. All in the Smiths app. Get 10 for $10 on select varieties of Kroger pasta, Starkist tuna pouches, or Powerade with your card. Then get USDA choice boneless beef rump or Eye of Round roast for $4.97 a pound with your card and a digital coupon. Shop these deals at your local Kroger today, or tap the screen now to download the Smiths app to save big today. Smiths, fresh for everyone. Prices and product availability subject to change. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
How to have fun, anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to
Center for Quarantine Zoology and co-edits both Journal and Animal Men and several editions of the annual CFC yearbook. Richard has written and co-written and edited a number of books and has contributed widely to both quarantine and zoological magazines as well as other newspapers and periodicals. including the Florentine Times and Paranormal Magazine. And I start off by asking Richard how he got his start in cryptozoology.
Well, I can answer that in three words for you. Classic Doctor Who. I grew up in the 1970s watching Doctor Who, which started way back in 1963, the longest running, most successful science fiction serial ever. Particularly in the 70s, it was very, very dark and frightening. It was more about horror than it was about science fiction. A lot of it was set on Earth, contemporary Earth, so you had various bizarre and strange creatures in these stories, like giant maggots crawling out of flat heat in Wales, intelligent humanoid dinosaurs waking up from millions of years of hibernation to find out an upstart ape called man has taken over their planet, Lovecraftian squid-like aliens that could animate plastic, giant rats in Victorian sewers tearing people's legs off. And it was really, really dark, scary stuff, not like the garbage that the BBC spews out today, which is an absolute disgrace. But that's what first got me interested in strange creatures. It was watching Doctor Who as a kid. And then later, as an adult, I became a zookeeper, and I started to work with reptiles at a zoo over in England, and then I got involved with this group called the Centre for Fortean Zoology. And since then, I've been all around the world hunting for strange creatures